Jeff Lutz, always thrilled to have you here on Wednesdays. I have the biggest news today, and it's something that might impact Tesla's stock and midterm performance as a company more than anything else possible. I'm
Oh,
calling off the recession
yeah. We had the Fed today.
via the Fed today. Not just the
Yeah.
Fed, but after listening to Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent last night, Federal Reserve Chairman Powell
Yeah.
today, and the market's response to Powell, Tesla's moving up like 5%. Bond yields are finally moving down. The economy, they say, is going to be solid. Interest rates are coming down. I think all of that should be absolutely amazing for Tesla. Am I right? Wrong? What do you think?
No, you're right. This was an induced growth scare. This was pure words coming out of the mouth of people and markets reacting. By the way, I don't necessarily fault, there is, if you make something and you hear the words coming out of the president's mouth, it doesn't actually connect to an operational plan. Like if the stuff I'm currently buying from Mexico is going to come in at a 25% tariff, and if I have stuff going outbound, they're going to tear like you have you have major massive uncertainties in this business environment, and you also have people working in between these tariff announcements or proclamations from the White House, and they're doing things like taking on inventory. So there's a tremendous amount of, I would say, instability created. So, and I think some of this may be purposeful, some of it's not. I'm not in the camp of they're doing it on purpose to get bond yields down. I don't think the White House wants to do that. But I do think that the messaging needs to, people like Bessent need the message. And he's delivering somewhat of a tough message too. It's not like he's saying everything's rosy, but he delivers it in a way where businesses can understand and potentially execute upon it. Versus, if I had to be critical of everything so far, that this scare in equity price. By the way, equities had a nice move right since October, November of last year. So they made a nice move from the mid to high 50, 5,000s in the S&P to low 6,000. So was it time for, 3 to 5% to come off? Sure. Didn't think it would be 10%,
Uh-huh.
but it's 10%. It was 15% in tech. So it's a fairly healthy move. We had 2 days of 90% advanced declining. I think Friday, maybe Monday. So that's a pretty good sign that there could have been some bottoming last week, but you never know.
Yeah, and it came down fast. And you know what they say when you have a correction that happens that fast, usually you're going to have a V-shaped response to it. So we might have gotten the beginning of that today because I have to believe that between Bessent and Powell, people are feeling a lot better about what's going to be happening the next 6 months.
Yes and no. So I would say I agree with you I agree with the majority of what you're saying. I'm pretty much aligned to it. Those are two very important voices. But the president's voice at some point, and I've predicted this too, lots of tariff noise, even before the election, but certainly, post inauguration, lots of noise. And the market, well, you saw the market literally reacting to the minute when there was all these press conferences being scheduled in the middle of the day. I'm like, what are you doing? And every reporter was set up with, just the perfect question on it. And you'd come back in a kind of a bombastic manner. So anyway, I predicted that at some point the market would be numbing to that.
Mm.
So while I agree with where Powell ended today and where Besson is, you still have this unknown. And if he takes it to 11, he turns the volume to 10 or 11 on some of this rhetoric, he could shock markets again. So when I say you're right on the V down
Mhm.
on the way up, I don't know how fast it's going to be unless this April 2nd event turns into a buy the news event, meaning leading up to April 2nd, there's a bunch of deals cast. All of a sudden, maybe there's a deal with India announced. Maybe there's a deal with Vietnam announced. Maybe there's a breakthrough with China. If a couple of these things happen, or of course, a Mexico
Right, Canada. Mhm.
Canada breakthrough, Well, then April 2nd turns into, all right, guess what? I've posted a lot about this. If you look at how we're tariffed and how the other nations tariff us versus how we tariff them, we're at a distinct disadvantage when you look at just the tariffs alone,
Right.
just tariffs alone. And then you look at the non-tariff barriers, which I get a bunch of bizarre responses on X from people who apparently have
Yep.
never built anything of like, oh, non-tariff barriers don't sound like anything, it doesn't sound real. No, they're real. They're very real.
Well, Jeff,
And yeah,
I mean, think about it. When you talk to somebody, when you talk to any of your friends, family, associates, whatever, and you say that you're an import export, if you said, I mean, I say that often, I'm an import export. Glaze. They don't even know,
yeah.
they don't know the beginning. They don't know anything about business to begin
And
with.
that's
But
okay.
then when it's import
Yeah.
export, that's like on another, it's unknown,
Yeah.
completely.
Don't, it's okay. Just don't get your news, your tariff news from a Cracker Jack box and the mainstream media and then and try to sound like an expert, write something under 160 characters on X and think you know everything because that's what the news told you. The non-tariff barriers are real. I'll give people one quick real example, and that's the VAT tax. And I get all these people just want to rise up and just no, don't conflate VAT and tariffs. Yes, you absolutely conflate them because they could take the tariffs down in China to whatever level. There's still a 17% VAT. And what that means is you can import at whatever tariff level they set at.
Mhm.
But if you're not producing in that country, when that product goes on sale, that VAT is applied to the product. The only way that that VAT gets relieved is that if you use components that were fabricated in that country. It's a way for them to drive localization of content and labor.
Mhm.
It's not evil. It's like they're trying to employ their people and they're trying to make sure. But it's a question of fairness. It's a question of is that how you drive commerce into your country, or are you doing it through innovation? So the U.S. is this massively innovative country, but we have all these different barriers to enter. And anyway, the VAT is one example.
Sure.
There's various duty types. There's duty types on quota basis. There's a number of different ways for them to trigger taxes and trigger barriers to import besides tariffs. But anyway, I
Absolutely.
digress.
Yeah, and we've talked about that a couple of the previous weeks. So I
Hmm.
want to come back to the best, depending on how much time we end
Yeah.
up having, because I've got about 7 hours here for you tonight. But I'd like to come back to the Bessent speech or the interview last
Yeah.
night. Let's go to another part of what is developing, I think, with regard to Tesla. I got a few of these. Gary Black has been running some credit card numbers. We saw the China numbers are excellent. Some of the European numbers, some of the countries that are starting to report way better than expected. What are you thinking about Tesla's sales? And we'll talk about the publicity in a minute, but sans publicity, even before publicity, with the numbers that we're seeing, is looking like a lot better than maybe we thought it might be at this point.
Um, it depends what your metric is. If it's production and delivery for Q1, the answer is probably no.
No,
And the reason is I don't think people have properly assessed the significant impact of the Model Y changeover.
right.
And I've been a critic as much as I've been supportive of Tesla in terms of how long that time
Mm.
span was in terms of that changeover. But there's no question it's the most difficult changeover to do in all of auto, just because of the volume of the product runs at.
Right.
So what Tesla did is and I'm not smarter than Tesla, but Tesla took a cash flow inventory conservative approach to this cutover, which is I don't want any of the old stuff. I don't want to turn on the new stuff until I got all the old stuff out. I'm saying some stuff in absolutes. Of course, there's some
Right.
there's movement on these things, but in general, they really optimize for inventory. And you saw it in their own balance sheet. 12 days of inventory is the lowest level of inventory I think they may have ever reported. It's certainly close to it. And just to put this in perspective for others, the next closest automaker is at 30, 35, and then they're all basically bunched up at 60. And here's Tesla at 12 days. You have to understand what that means. That means there's different metrics too. There's days of inventory outstanding, there's days of inventory, and there's days of sales outstanding. To simplify it for everybody, what it basically means is how, based on the rate of sellout of the product, how many days are there till your inventory actually goes to zero.
Mhm.
But that's not how supply chains work. You have to maintain a certain level of inventory to be in stock. So when somebody walks into a place of business, they have the opportunity, they have a greater than 70 or 80% chance of opportunity of something being in stock that they want so they can make the purchase and walk out with the product. And anyway, so that was a long answer. Let me just get directly to your point. The Model Y changeover, you pick your number of weeks it took. It's 3, 4, or 5 weeks. And the way supply planning works is they take the peak week of production that you took out of production, which is about 29K a week on the Model Y, and you just multiply it by 3, 4, or 5. If you think it's 3, 4, or 5 weeks, the CFO told you it was several weeks. Go to Webster's dictionary and look up the definition of several. It's not one, it's not zero, it's not one,
Not
it's
two.
not two. The
Yes.
question is it more than a few, which is could be three, and or is it 4 or 5? I don't think it's more than 4 or 5 or 6 weeks. And by the way, we don't even know if production is like super smooth. We don't even know if they're back at that peak 29K. I would be surprised if they're actually at that 29K a week right now. I don't think they're there yet. So the reason my answer to your question is P&D will may not be better than expected is because of production. And it's linked to two things: production and inventory. They were aggressive on the inventory bring down
Mhm.
and the production loss of the Model Y. Now you can say that they're going to make all that up in Q2, and I think they're going to make a lot of it up in Q2. But in the supply chain world, there is something called the basically the perishable demand, and that is it's not coming back. Meaning somebody on February 7th wanted to get a Model Y like product and they couldn't
Mhm.
because you are at stock out levels of inventory and you didn't have the new one ready. So you will have a percentage of people of that demand that's permanently lost for the year. Um, but your other points around the sale, so the credit card data, let's take that one. That I think that's coming from a database called ALTD, and that's real. That's really looking at credit card traffic to Tesla e-commerce sites, which is where you would put your $250 down payment, and looking at that activity, that's a real data point.
Yeah.
And I'm glad Gary publicized that. And then finally, where there were pockets of inventory, we have and with the new Model Y out there now in some amount of volume, we're seeing the sales are returning to normality. We're seeing like, okay, there's supply of cars, people are going in and buying them, and they're flying off the shelf. The China data points are coming in line. There's a lot of FUD too. There's a lot of, even the China data points, 15 point whatever 3K, just a lot of FUD. They've got to reach all these tier 3, 4, and 5 cities in China with product. It doesn't happen in one day from
Right.
Shanghai. It doesn't happen in 5 days. Okay. And we have no certainty that China is or Shanghai is even up at a good daily rate yet. The Europe data points looks like Germany is stabilizing. We just need more data points.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
single month data points are just
Yeah. They're tough. Yes.
very dangerous.
So I have, of course, written a book called The Elon Musk Method, where I talked about the 16 things that I thought Elon Musk was the goat on all 16 things. One of those is as a master of PR. And so as the head of the PR department, he has been out there fairly substantially over the last week with maybe the biggest PR stunt in history with the president. He's been on Hannity. He's done a two-part show with Ted Cruz. He's rescued the astronauts which got amazing amounts of publicity, has a never-ending publicity from Fox since the event at the White House. Now, some people want him to go back to Austin and work on the line or figure out some model changeover or something. But I wonder if any of them have a clue as to the value of that publicity. What if you added it up in terms of the comparison to advertising, what the dollar value would be? It would be in the billions of dollars.
Yeah, even the negative press is press.
Right.
And yeah, now I just reposted. There's a conservative influencer on X, and she's talking about her new Model S and just how amazing they're seeing a Tesla for the first time because there's a reality distortion field on the conservative side against EVs.
Yes.
They wouldn't go in them, they wouldn't touch them, they talk down about them. It's terrible. Like it's terrible. But it's all breaking through now. But there's two sides of that coin. Where a lot of these people live, Teslas are not allowed to even be sold in
Right.
some of these states. So we have some real stupidity from local legislators and just these politics around dealerships that are preventing people from having access to technology and preventing competition. So I think we have to break through on that. So I do think a lot of Teslas are going to be ordered by conservatives. I don't know if it's the nature of Tesla sales. There's a lot of word of mouth of
Right.
I bought this thing. It's great.
Right.
It's not, it's great. You should try it. And now you're going to enter a new sphere of people that were previously just almost not penetrated before with this data. So I think it's going to help, but we still have barriers just to selling Teslas.
Sure, yeah. And in some of those cases, Tesla has found workarounds, like doing it on Indian reservation, putting their showrooms in Indian reservations, which are sovereign nations, not controlled by the state. In other cases, you can place your order, put your order in, and then you have to pick it up outside the state lines. And I mean, there are some workarounds, but yes, it is
Where are you
friction.
going to service? I mean, it doesn't need service much at all. I
No,
mean,
that's
I
true.
don't do anything besides have them change my winter and my summer tires out. But
I know.
yeah, but if you do have to service the
Yeah,
vehicle, yeah,
that's the
I mean,
problem.
that has to just be fixed. But yeah, in general, I agree with you. Tremendous earned media, tremendous exposure. But I mean, there's two sides of that coin. Can people buy them? And then there's also just, I mean, this terrorism is put fear in people too, in
Yeah.
terms of just owning them or going to buy one.
Yeah, I think that's a problem as well. Well, let's talk about that. So the Democrats and the really, really loony left have been protesting, firebombing, assaulting drivers and their cars, threatening the owners, ruining paint jobs, protesting at showrooms. And now the vice president the Democratic candidate, has thrown serious shade at one of the largest companies and one of the largest employers in the United States. And then Jimmy Kimball's audience is laughing it up about the people that have been harmed by all of this nonsense. So
I mean, there's not much to say. Yeah, sorry.
well, I was just going to ask, is this going to be a negative or is this going to backfire on him?
I mean, I think in the end it backfires. It's unfortunate and it's a just and it's I want to say both sides, but this is really bad what's happening here. But there's misinformation when these things happen. You know, I don't even understand. I don't even understand the economic. Do people just not know basic economics? That Elon has $200 billion of net worth outside of Tesla. He owns less than 13% of Tesla. So if you're taking down Tesla, you're taking down 87% of retail shareholders, pension funds, employees, and other Democrats, all and Republicans. Like you're going after more of other people than him. Him is everything else is he's built, and the 200 billion he has outside of Tesla. You know, I always like to do things in terms of the number of George Soroses there are, and that's about 30 George Soroses that he has outside of Tesla. So it this doesn't pass the common sense test. Honestly, it doesn't pass the common sense test at all. And of course, you know, the violence thing, it's an obvious. You just don't do that. It's like somebody else worked hard for that to buy that product and use it, and they want to use it safely, and they don't want their product damaged. And I don't understand being anti, whatever, and then painting their symbols on the products. Like, well, then you're actually propagating
Yeah.
the message. So there's not much else to say, Randy. I would think it's unfortunate, and it's hopefully something that we can move past.
I just from a marketing standpoint, which of course is my specialty, from a marketing standpoint, it seems to me to be backfiring. It seems to me to be energizing. So we talk about the conservatives that are being awakened, if you will, to the idea of a Tesla and maybe willing to get into one or go test drive one, or maybe look at it as a stock opportunity for the first time where they were completely against it. So that was happening anyway because of the Republican relationship with Musk.
Yeah.
But then if you you put fire to that, you light it up. All of a sudden, the folks that I mean, I know from the people that I'm talking to that they're on fire now. They are like so mad at what the Democrats are doing that it's firing them up in terms of being like you're now a battle buddy with Tesla.
Yeah, I think hopefully both things are more short-lived. Again, you have the right to protest peacefully. I think the signs are absurd, but I think if you think a certain right or a certain policy is something you don't agree with, then I think you should speak eloquently about it, and I think you should protest it. But when there's just a line in terms of doing that, and then all the vandalism, but and then these organizers and provocateurs and celebrities and people that think, and late night comedians that think that just can't do, it's silly. It's economic silliness. They can't do basic math of he's gonna first off, Tesla's not going to zero.
Right.
Tesla's got $30 billion in the bank that you have
Over.
no access to.
Right.
No, you have no access to.
Right.
And they make products that people love. And so none of that's going to happen. But it's just economic silliness to think that they could arm him. It just it's almost like it's this thought process that's suspended in time, like it's 5 years ago or 10 years ago when he's bootstrapping the company versus today,
Yeah.
and where it is and where all of his other businesses is. He is worth over $200 billion outside of Tesla. So just speak truth to facts, truth to power on some of these things, and let's move past this. If there's a conversation to have it. My whole thing on Doge is engage versus just this.
Yeah.
I mean, engage, like be part of the solution.
Yeah, I've been saying the same thing. I don't think you and I have had that conversation, but I can, my videos for the whole week, I think, since we last talked is where are the Democrats that are coming up like Newt Gingrich on the other side of the aisle and saying, hey, you're right, we need to cut the budget. Now let's work together. We have different ideas about maybe how to get that done. How can we work together? But there's none of that. Zero, none, zip. It just blows my mind. Well, let's talk about the positive side. The Model Y rollout has now included glowing reports from Sandy Munro, Jay Leno's Garage, and countless others. Bottom line, will the Model well now, with these kinds of glowing reports, combined with all the things we just talked about, I've been saying for a while now, not even counting the fact that I think when we have unsupervised self-driving, that will blow up the sales. Let's say, for whatever reason, that ends up being put off till October, November. What's happening with the conservative push? What's happening with the maybe kickback from these negative things that are going on with the quality of the product and all of the publicity now that's rolling out about it? Are we looking at a chance that we might be able to sell out production?
We'll see. I view these things on the margins. There's three things that may be impacting production or sales in the current quarter. And one was the inventory level we started with, which is the lowest ever, 20% lower than the prior quarter. When people wonder, how are we 11% down in sales in January? First off, you don't look at sales on a monthly basis, but if you do, if you come in with 20% less inventory and you're stocked out, there's a good chance that you will have an inability to sell because there's just physics. You have to restart production and you have to get it landed and sold inside of that 30-day month. It's not going to happen. The other thing is look at the graph. Rivian was 22% off as well.
Right.
Is anybody, protesting their operation? At least not yet. Hopefully never. So it's hard to say, but I always look at things in terms of just if if you're a manufacturing professional or supply chain professional and you just want to break it down logically. Number one, if you come in with that low of inventory, you have to have time to build it up. So I coming in with that low of inventory already put me in a perspective of it's going to be tough to replicate the sales of the prior quarter in fourth quarter. Okay, so that was I think 495.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then you have Q1 seasonality. Boom, that's going to knock it down more. And then you have this whole thing of the really the highest thing is the Model Y changeover. You have if you lose 4 weeks of production, you're talking about 116,000 cars coming out of the number.
Right.
So
Right.
if their nominal production is in the 400 to 500, 450 to 500K range,
Mhm.
and you subtract 116,000 cars, you just do the math. And you didn't have the inventory from the prior quarter.
Right.
It's
Right.
not like you let it build up to 18 or 19 or 20 days, which would have still been great. No, they knocked it down. So I would not be on the higher side of the number. Now, here's how I could be proven wrong. The Model Y ramp is going faster than we all thought. They pre-built more in Q4 and in Q1 more than we thought. There's no way of really knowing or tracking that. Obviously the pre-orders were better than, and the order conversions better than we thought. And what if they took inventory down even farther? What if they took inventory down to 5 days?
Jeez.
I mean, some weird number that would flush another, several thousands of units
Right.
out of from inventory into sales and delivery. So those are the things that could surprise us on the upside. I just think that they're less likely in this quarter. This quarter is production of the Model Y wrote the story for the quarter. I hope they communicate it very clearly.
Yeah.
Last year in Q1, I think they came in 20 or 30, some 15, 20, 30, 25K light,
Right.
and the market puked
Yes.
if you remember in April. And it was very clear what happened in Q1 with the Red Sea, with the Berlin attack, with the Model 3 changeover. I was literally telling people like they're going to lose a lot of units. But I said they're going to make it up in the next quarter. And literally
Right.
Tesla got on the earnings call and said, we lost units due to this, but we're going to make it all up this
Right.
quarter. Those are going to land in April and sell.
And they did.
They did. April and May. So
So I'm looking. I'm
so
looking
we'll see.
further out though, Jeff. I'm looking at the marketing aspect. So if the economy is doing well, better than we thought, maybe a couple of days ago, certainly better than I thought a couple of days ago. If the economy is doing better than we thought, if the interest rates are coming down, and if we've got all of these positive things that we just talked about in terms of the model, in terms of the company and the Model Y potentially, quarter two, quarter three, quarter four. I'm not talking about the Model 3, just basically the Model Y. Do we sell out Model Ys at some point because of all this positive activity?
Well, you could, but Tesla has more capacity than they had production last year, and meaningfully more. It's uh, you always want, by the way, the supply chain 101, you have to have more capacity than production. You do not want to be running at 100% utilization. You will break something and cause worse problems. But they had meaningfully more capacity, so it would be hard for them to sell. The way that they would sell out is that they did not trigger their inbound suppliers, and they do have this big burst of
Oh,
demand. Um, and, but you have a lot of risk on the other side. You have tariffs, which I think Tesla will be hit less than anybody else. You have the risk of the $7,500 credit coming off, but I don't know when that could happen now. If we're waiting till Q3 for the budget. I mean, this is just going to stay on most of the year,
I think it'll
but
be.
you have that risk out there. Um, yeah. So do you have positives and you have risks, but the fact that the Model Y is such a much better product than what it's replacing, the fact that their net promoter score is so high, they have put themselves in a good position, but it's really not going to be a car story. It's going to
Yeah, I
be,
understand
did
that.
you get the unsupervised?
Yeah, I'm just talking units at this
Yeah.
point. We all agree, once unsupervised and robotaxi happens, the situation changes a ton.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get back to Scott Bessent in his amazingly transparent and coherent talk. I can't think of I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah.
I started watching that. Usually I go to bed at 10:30, try to get, I might listen to something for a few minutes. I listened to that until 11:30. I could not stop listening to it. It was so coherent. It was so transparent. Chamath and David Freeberg, they did an amazing job, I thought. I thought their questions were great. Thought they interrupted a couple of times when I wouldn't have interrupted, but I thought that it was amazing. What were some of your takeaways that you think? I've got a whole list here that I'll help you with if you need help.
Well, I only listened to parts of it. I haven't
Oh,
had
you've only
heard the
listened
whole
to
thing
part
in
of it.
its entirety.
Oh my goodness. Well, so he talked about the fact that he's got the three stools. We've heard him talk about the three stools, three
Mhm.
legs stool before. So cheap energy, regulations, which will help productivity, and then lower taxes. So you get those three legs of the stool. It's pretty hard to imagine a situation where the economy doesn't go extremely well.
Right.
But he put a number to it last night, if you weren't listening. He put a number to it. He said 1 to 1.5%. I'm sorry, yeah, 1 to 1.5. Yeah. So instead of the 2.3, 2.5% GDP increases that we've been having, he's saying 1 to 1.5% higher.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I mean, it's a sound strategy. The question is, will the patient be in good shape by the time we get to that sound strategy? And because if you look at the credit card debt, if you look at the auto loan delinquencies, if you look at mortgage delinquencies, there's some stuff brewing under the surface. And then you look at who and where the jobs were added in the last year. There's some definitely things that are brewing under the surface. But if that economy has time to blossom, I mean I agree with the approach.
He mentioned something which I've been talking about now for, I don't know, Larry and I started talking about it, I think 18 months ago, which was the two-part economy. The people that were doing well were people that had assets. He talked about that. He said that for 40 years, both the Republicans and the Democrats, because of this globalist approach, have been destroying the middle class, taking the manufacturing base away from this country, which was what was supporting the middle class. And that the part of the big goal here is to bring back the jobs to the middle class. And I think that's pretty funny for somebody who did all of his education and knowledge learning about finance under Soros and what's his face? Uh, anyway, under globalists.
Yeah.
So he is now reversed and flipped. And he's like, no, we need to be America first. We need to bring back this manufacturing. And if we bring back the manufacturing, we can rebuild the middle class. We can get positive, real income increases for those folks who don't have the assets. And then we've got all this property. The federal government has all this property in the inner cities, actually, and in the burbs that they could provide as places where they could build more housing.
I've often told people this from my experience in managing manufacturing. I was always more on the technical side, but there was a point where it was pure, managing factory production. And it's a very special thing. Those jobs are a very special thing. And this is the answer to the question because a lot of people say, shouldn't we just be focused on AI jobs? Shouldn't we just be focused on the next technology? Why do we want to bring back this manufacturing stuff? And there's an answer to the question. First off, we don't necessarily have to bring back a lot of older technologies unless they're essential, like they're medical, they're essential minerals, mining, essential production. Have we should have sufficient capacity of everything in the U.S. That's a national security issue. But this bringing back tech manufacturing, this is what it does to a community. First off, you open a factory, you may have, and I built, in fact, say you have 3,000 jobs. A lot of those jobs are going to be the people assembling product on the line. They're going to get a good wage, they're going to get benefits, they're going to get everything. They're going to have a 9 to 5, they're going to have a structured existence, and that is a good thing. But the big thing that factories do that other places can't do as well is they create a ladder. And they create a ladder for people to want to do better. So they could, you can be in production on the manufacturing line saying, well, I want to have better quality. I want to be faster. And if I have better quality and I'm faster, or if I come up with new ideas for how to make the line run better, I may get promoted to line supervisor. And now when I'm shift supervisor on the line, now I make more money. And then all of a sudden I can go from shift supervisor to manager of an area. Now I'm all of a sudden now a manager of, instead of the back end of the factory, now a manager of both the back end and the front end. Oh, okay. Well, now that was only on one shift. Now I'm managing across, I could be across both shifts. Okay. Well, then now I just got promoted to director. There's this ladder. I just named off 6 different jobs that you could have starting with manufacturing widgets on the line. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of industries that are like that where people, and it's self-selecting. It's if you do really good work, you can move up, and it really motivates everybody to do good work. Right. And then there's also technical jobs. There's technicians, there's engineers to design the production equipment. There's all kinds of ladders of jobs that are involved. And then you bring the supply chain in, and then you say, okay, we're not going to just be assembling in the United States. Now we're going to build a local supply chain around us. And then that's creating more jobs. And then restaurants have to be created like this. That really works. I know. That really does work. And you can tell when you extract that out of a particular town, what it does to the rest of the economy around in that town. You can totally tell. But that manufacturing ladder is key, and it's very unique.
Yeah, I think, again, I did this for 30 years, and I not only had people that went up that ladder, but when I sold out, the new owner was stupid enough to fire a bunch of my top people. Guess what? They went out and bought the equipment, and they started up, and they're still making water bottles today. They started their own company, and they're doing just fine. So they actually went from being entrepreneurial. One of the other things that he said and is being laughed at today, Powell said it today. I'm pretty sure, I think Bessent might have said it also, that tariffs are transitory. And I've talked an awful lot about tariffs. I'm not sure we've ever addressed the fact that they are not inflationary. They are a price increase. Talk to me.
Yeah, this is another one where you could be having the conversation with somebody and they may have all the right intentions in the world, but if they haven't had a macroeconomics 101 class, or they haven't been in business themselves actually importing the product or exporting the product, then they probably don't know what they're talking about. And they're getting they're being spoon-fed points from the media, which are kind of on a political mission to basically say everything that one side is doing is bad. And so, with tariffs, so they're not inflationary because you're not increasing the money supply. If there's not additional money supply to go after the higher prices of goods, the net price increase on goods, it doesn't hold. It doesn't happen. So you don't, if you don't have additional money supply, it's not inflationary. So now let's get down to the practicality. Some importers will have to pay some of that additional price. Some importers will pass that along to the consumer. Some exporters may have to pick up a piece, if not all of that price, to keep their factory running at greater utilization back home in Mexico. If they drop their utilization, let's say they drop it from 75 to 60 or 50%, their fixed cost absorption goes up. So they know what that price is in unit economics of the price of dropping my production because I'm gonna fold my arms and say I'm not covering any of this tariff, versus saying, you know what, I'll pitch in, because if I don't pitch in for 5% of this, my costs are actually going to go up 10% if I don't do it. So they got a number in their head. It's all negotiation. Same thing with the home market. Walmart and Costco right now are telling China, we're not taking any price increase.
Yeah.
And guess what? How many store Walmart and Costco have a captive audience?
Yeah.
They have tremendous sales.
Huge.
They have a tremendous graph to be able to put in front of any outbound exporter and say, all right, do you want access to the market or not?
Yeah.
Because I can shut you out tomorrow. And in the end, who knows? There'll be some sharing, but it's there's not one answer is the point. Right now, the media wants to just give you one answer, which is tariffs are a tax on Americans. We put these tariffs on. By the way, they don't show you the tariff and non-tariff barriers on Americans trying to build product and export product abroad. They will not show you that graph at all, but it would show you that America, the United States, continental United States, including Hawaii and Alaska, have the least amount of tariffs on and tariff and non-tariff barriers on product.
Yeah, and again, people that haven't ever been in front of that buyer, trying to sell them at Kmart or Kmart at Walmart or Costco. If you've never been in front of the
Dating
buyer,
yourself there.
yeah, I know, I just dated myself. So if they have never been in front of that buyer, then also they don't realize that you go in front of that buyer and you've been selling that buyer for 2 years. And he's been perfectly happy. The product's been selling through. Everything's all rosy. And the buyer goes, I want 5% more. I want you to take your price down 5%. And you're like, what are you talking about? We're doing fine here. It's not just about tariffs. It's not just about incentives that are being given by governments. It's not just, we haven't even talked about currency valuations going up and down, countries devaluing their currency in order to support their local economy. I mean, there's so many impact. We had, I'm sure you've gone through it a million times, chargebacks. You have companies that CVS almost, I mean, I forget how much they had to pay the US government for their chargeback fraud that they did to people, just sending chargebacks to companies because they knew that the companies would eat it. Because what are you going to do? No, I don't want your business anymore. So you have a million of these moving pieces, and tariffs is just one of them. I also looked it up, Jeff. I don't know if you knew this or not. The US import number is only 14% of the GDP. So if it was 10%, let's say it was average 10% that actually made it all the way through the system, you would still only be looking at 1.4% price increase as a result of it, one time, transitory, not repeated next year.
Yeah. So right. And we just have to break these conversations down into economics and theory and really the practicality of economics, and then what may happen in reality. If the tariffs are not applied in a proper, thoughtful way, it can be destructive to our economy. We have to give producers the time to come up with an American manufacturing solution.
Well, and I think you're talking about too a complex manufacturer.
Correct.
In my little business, the imported things that I was doing, like Snoopy bicycle horns, I didn't need a long time to figure out what to do. Maybe 3 months would have been time to switch over to Vietnam or to go to Mexico or something to get those Snoopy horns made. But when you're talking about an automobile, which is the phones, which are so much more complex, to try to do it in a few months is nutty. Listen, I got time for one last thing, and it really was kind of the most important one of all in terms of when I was listening to Bessent last night. And what he said was, because they hit him right in the nose, they said, couldn't this throw us into a recession? All these cuts of the government positions, all of the cuts of the contracts, taking $1 trillion out of the economy. He says, he didn't actually say, what do you think, I'm an idiot? But basically, he said, we're totally aware of that. He says, in fact, the Republican Congress is trying to push us to do it fast. And we're having to talk to the Congress and say, no, we need to roll this out slowly. It's okay if it takes till 2028 to get the total deficit down to 3% of GDP. We don't. So we were going to do this in a way that's not going to destroy the economy. I
Yeah.
thought that was huge.
Yeah, I mean he is the Secretary of Treasury. He's a very powerful position, and there's a lot of authority that comes with that, and there's a lot of visibility that he has. So I think I think he has his head screwed on straight. I think he's very smart. I think he knows how to communicate effectively, and I think the cabinet trusts him. I think the president trusts him. So it's really going to come down to, I think when you get over a little over to the commerce side, though, it's a little bit more. This is where that April 2nd rollout has got to be communicated flawlessly. The charts have to be up. I'd love to see the press secretary up there, her communicating with her team. And I don't want people, with their six shooters on their waist pulling out and shooting here or there. We can't have that. We have to have a very objective rollout of these reciprocal tariffs, and we have to look like we're in this to do business. We're in this to take these tariff barriers down.
Mhm.
We also have to be careful what we're asking for because we're not taking the China EV tariff barrier down. We're not doing that. So there's going to be some select industries where we're not going to be able to do that. So we have to be very careful on the messaging of this. But in general, I thought the parts of the interview. I'm going to watch the whole thing, but I was
It's
very impressed. I've been watching all of his other interviews. He's very impressive.
very impressive. I would say across the board, the cabinet people, their communication skills, the clarity, the transparency, it blows my mind.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, on that positive note, I guess I'm going to go ahead and do the numbers because they're probably looking really good. And I'll let you mosey on down the road. And thank you so much for uh, walking through that with me.
Thank you.
All
Take
right.
care.
Well, all right. So, what in the world has the market's been doing with that since we last looked? We will start with the fact that today the Dow ended up plus almost a full percent, 0.92. The Nasdaq was up 1.41%. The S&P was up 1.08%. So that's a pretty good showing for the entire day. And all of them were up a bit more, but came down near the end. I think a little profit taking there near the end. But Tesla was up 4.68%. What I'm starting to see here is that Tesla is pretty normally now being 3 times. The delta is more like 3 times, not 2 times. It has been 2 to 3, but now it's almost consistently 3. And if you think about the overall market being down as much as it is, and you multiply that times 3, it makes a lot more sense. Let's look at, and then the Magnificent Seven, all up nicely, but nothing anywhere close to Tesla. NVIDIA, which had a great talk. Everybody's applauding their talk today or yesterday and today. They were only up 1.81%. So Tesla was by far the star at 4.68, and the Cathie Woods were also all up. I did look up Square, by the way, after many, many days of promising. Square was way down. It had been crushed because of multiple reasons. They are actually coming back. So the reason it's been up day after day after day is because they're actually on the way back. So I thought that was interesting. Okay, let's go ahead and look at Tesla and the after hours, up another 1.55. So we're at 239.51 at this exact hour. So that's very positive that it is it's recovering most of the little bit of downtrend that there was at the end of the day. Let's go ahead and now look at the bonds, which were down last time I looked. Let's see if they still are. We are down just 1 basis point, but that also it had reversed the earlier up today. So the combination is we are now under my magic number. We're under 4.25. We're at 4.246. Now, it was under that. It was under even more earlier in the day. So I'm hoping that this will pick up tomorrow again. We'll see this continue down toward that 3.99, which would make me so happy. Of course, then I'll want more. Oil up only 13 cents. On the Texas Intermediate, 67.29, very much where it's been now for a week. Natural gas down 1.32, still sitting at $4.20, $4.19. It's perked back up over that $4 number. Gold up another 18.30 today at 3,059, all-time high again. Silver up 0.83% at $34.49. That's in the ballpark of its all-time high. I mean, it's with an asterisk, as you know. Copper is up 0.46 at 51235. I'm not 100% sure, but that would also be near its all-time high. We have got Bitcoin recovering, like we're talking about. Whatever Bitcoin does, Tesla does, or is it the opposite? I'm not sure. Bitcoin up 5.75% today, which would be almost the same as Tesla at 86,800, getting down into the bottom. Never mind. I'm not going to go through all that right now. Stock futures, equities are Dow Jones up I'm sorry. Is this right? Could this be right? No, that's today. Pre-market. Yeah, that was going to be looking really good. Pre-market is everything's up. The Dow 0.13 or 57 points. The S&P up 0.24 or 1375. 14. Yeah, actually, it just changed to 14. And the Nasdaq's up 0.30% or 60.25. So looking like we're going to probably be moving into a positive situation tomorrow. And so we'll look forward to that. So I want you to go back and look last night at the show I did. It was outstanding about Elon Musk. You're going to want to go back and look at that one if you haven't already. I am going to have a show at 7:45 tonight. Would you believe I have no idea what it's going to be on? But I'll come up with something good. Brian Wong is traveling. He is at a conference. And so he's not able to break away. And so for the third night in a row, I have to produce yet another show on my own. But I promise you excellence. Tomorrow, things should be back to normal. We should have CERN Basher, and we should have, yeah, right, whatever his name, Bradford Ferguson. Both of them should be on tomorrow as well as the show first thing in the morning. So with all of that said, I hope this was good and interesting. If it was, hit the like, hit subscribe, hit notify, join Patreon, do all those things, and add to my exuberance about what we learned today. It has been great talking to you.